Hello. I'm all bundled up in my little Christmas jacket, pretending like it's cold here. I'm always cold. I'm so glad we're getting to meet at this time before we all go off into our holiday world. And actually, I want to just start, and you'll see why, but I want to start with a poem. And I would just ask you to even just take this minute and close your eyes or put your hands on your heart, or put your hands on a part of your body that needs it, that needs a little like presencing right now. And let's just listen to this poem. It's called In Silence, and it's by Thomas Merton. Be still. Listen to the stones of the wall. Be silent. They try to speak your name. Listen to the living walls. Who are you? Who are you? Whose silence are you? Who, be quiet, are you, as these stones are quiet? Do not think of what you are still, do not think of what you are, still less of what you may one day be. Rather, be what you are, but who? Be the unthinkable one you do not know. Oh, be still while you are alive and all things live around you, speaking, I do not hear, to your own being, speaking by the unknown that is in you and in themselves. I will try like them to be my own silence, and this is difficult. The whole world is secretly on fire. The stones burn, even the stones, they burn me. How can a man be still or listen to all things burning? How can he dare to sit with them when all their silence is on fire? You know, and it's not even so important for me when I read that poem to feel like I'm understanding it. It feels to me much more like there is a quality that's being called in, an invitation, a stopping, a listening, a silence, which I have been practicing. I have been practicing these last weeks in this fullness. It's been a very full time, but I keep on stopping and saying, listen, be still, be still, because unless we're still and listening, we're not taking anything in. I was recently at a gathering and I'm trying to think of where it was now. Oh, I was teaching a small, like, day-long private retreat kind of thing. And this woman was talking about how she drops down to speak with the children, like she works with children, and how she comes down to their level to listen. And I was very moved by that because I could feel the contrast of this, you know, the activity up here, the activity, you know, even the activity up here in my head, above, and then what goes on sort of quietly along the height of children, and how we have to like drop down into that world of observation and play and quiet. And I don't know, I was moved by that, because sometimes it's so easy to not hear and be distracted and be in the vibration of the mental activity and not stop. So my invitation to myself and to all of us at this particularly during this week when we're getting closer and closer to the solstice, when we're getting, when it's getting darker and darker, is to find your moments of silence and stillness and claim them and breathe. And it's no mistake. I'm going to bring up the chart of this moment, because for the first time, we are beginning under Pisces. We're beginning under a Pisces rising, okay? So this is the chart of this day. And here's Neptune, the god of silence and the god of spaciousness and the god of spirituality and the god of stillness, right there at the ascendant. And there's this Pisces rising that says, shh. That says, listen for the silence under the sound, or listen for the sound under the silence. And there's a great willingness to flow with Pisces rising, and a great willingness to flow into the next moment and not plan your way into the next moment and not force your way into the next moment and not effort your way into the next moment, but to flow into the next moment. And of course, here we have the Taurus moon that moved in early this morning, Pacific time. And of course, Taurus and Pisces are both deeply feminine, and they're deeply receiving. So even though we have the sun in Sagittarius in the 10th house, which says, here our dharmic offering in this moment is to, continue the quest for more spiritual understanding. And, there's a lot of expansion and purpose here. It's almost as if we enter it in a different way. We enter it through a steadiness, through a stillness, through the quietness of this circle, through a kind of absorption. We've been doing this now since September, October, November, December. So we've met now 8 times. And so there's something also about, at first, there's often like all the facts. And believe me, I'm going to give you a lot of facts today. But there's also something about the trusting that when you show up in a circle, at whatever hour you show up in this circle, because many of you listen to this later, it's an opportunity to dip into an ocean of wisdom that we all bring to the circle, and we all bring, and to dip into it and steep in it, and to absorb just through showing up and being still in a great wisdom teaching. Yeah. And of course, this is quite beautiful, this Mercury conjunct Jupiter, which will get closer and closer. And ultimately, when the sun moves into Capricorn on the 21st, it will be an exact conjunction of Mercury and Jupiter. So right now it's close enough, absolutely. And this is inspirational message. This is giving words to your vision. This is goal setting. This is talking with others about your vision, about your hopes. And it's going to get closer and closer and closer. And what I kind of love about the journey of the week is that by the time we get to Friday, when the sun moves into Capricorn at 2:23 p.m. Pacific time, it's close to that. It's in the 2 o'clock hour. When that moves in, we have that exact conjunction. So we have this beautiful combination of Sagittarian energy, all about expansion. And we have this beautiful, purposeful threshold energy. Like we're crossing now into clarity, coolness, uprightness, purpose. Now, as a little Capricorn moon myself, you know that I love to enter this time. And because it is a time when it feels like, yes, we all should plan. We all should plan. We all should be, thinking about our next steps. But we get to plan with a little less sobriety or a little less seriousness and a little more like breathing in, inspiring, feeling motivated in a new way. So what's also beautiful about Friday is that there will also be a trine of Neptune and Venus on that same day. And Neptune and Venus together, they're like high, like Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. They're both planets of love. They're both planets of artistry. They're both planets of beauty. And they're both in water signs. So there's a tremendous flow of feeling and tenderness and sensitivity and attunement. I sort of feel more so than ever about this holiday time that yes, we gather, yes, we celebrate, but there is a kind of stillness and receiving and intensity to it that is predicated by some of the energies we're working with. So yes, this Venus Neptune trine is just like, it's a delicious, poetic, musical, inspirational receiving. And part of the reason why I just said what I said is that when we get to New Year's Eve, and Ellen and I talk about this in the Capricorn podcast that's going to come out on the 21st. But when we get to New Year's Eve, interestingly enough, the moon is in Scorpio on New Year's Eve. And so when I saw that, I was like, you know what? It's not a night for me to be out and about. It's a night of deep introspection. It's a night of deep intention setting. It's a night of it feels like it's a line in the sand in an interesting way, like consciously crossing a threshold. And by the time we get to January 1st, Saturn and the sun are exactly lined up. So you know, we have this deep psychological, rich Scorpio that night. And then the next day is this Saturn sun in Capricorn, which is so purposeful. And by the way, also on the 31st, Mars moves into Aries. So today, as we see, we have this lineup of Neptune and Mars, which is very idealistic. It's very compassionate. You know, there's a real sort of devotional energy to it. But when we get to the 31st, we get to this place of, here we go, boom. And then we have Aries strong and we have Capricorn strong and this deep initiating energy. So it'd be interesting to feel into your plans for the new year and to see what feels appropriate for you with that intense Scorpio and very strong Capricorn. I always make a collage on New Year's Day. I always draw cards with my family on New Year's Day, different cards, animal cards, tarot cards, you know, and we write about it and we just sort of explore it together. And I love that. It's very intentional. So also I want to mention that we will have a solar eclipse and a new moon on January 5th. And what's interesting about this, and this is something we can talk about through, you know, as things progress, is that throughout this whole year, there are a bunch of eclipses, 3 all in Capricorn. So there's a huge activity around the energy of Capricorn. And I believe one of them is at 8 degrees, one of them is at 15 degrees, one of them is at 20 something degrees. And if you have planets around that degree in Capricorn, it's going to light up those planets. It's going to activate those planets. And that activation lasts for like 6 months. So wherever that planet is, whatever house it's in, it's going to light that up. So, you know, Capricorn. I mean, we have the full moon. I mean, I should have said this right away, but we have the full moon of Capricorn the day after it moves into Capricorn. So the 22nd is a full moon of Capricorn. And then January 5th is a solar eclipse and new moon of Capricorn. And we then start to have, you know, we'll have Mercury, we'll have Saturn, we'll have the sun all in Capricorn. So there's just tremendous Capricorn energy. And I've been doing so many charts recently. I love how people, you know, sort of comes in batches, where I've been doing so many charts for people with strong Capricorn, and particularly in the later degrees. And those people with charts with planets in the later degrees of Capricorn, the next year and a half is going to be like mind blowing, because Pluto's going to hit everything, Saturn's going to hit everything, and Jupiter's going to hit everything. right? So Pluto's going to hit those positions. Then Saturn's going to come along by the mid to late next year and hit all those 20 something Capricorns. And then Jupiter's going to come at the very end of 2019 and early 2020 and hit all those 20 Capricorn, start to hit Capricorn. So it's a profound time for Capricorns. It's a really, yeah. So that gives you a glimpse of a little bit of what's going on right now. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I particularly want to say about this exact moment in time. I mean, today also, it's always good to just look at the chart of the day and say, what do I know about it? What can I learn from this? Today also we have Saturn trine the moon. And it hits exactly around 7 something tonight. And Saturn trine the moon is beautiful. It's deeply steadying. It's deeply emotionally calming. It brings in the silence, just like that poem. It brings in the stillness. So it brings stability and calm and quiet to the whole emotional and domestic domain. And you can sort of then quietly, purposefully move forward. You can feel settled in yourself. You can feel like you're fully in the present moment. Yeah. Good. Okay. I want to show you something. Look at this. They're just getting better and better. They're insane. Look at that chart. Wyow has painted a whole bunch of new charts, and this is one of them. I mean, it's like, to me, this feels like the poem, like the stones are on fire. I mean, there's something that's just like you can feel the life breath in this. Like you can feel the vitality in this. And then for contrast, look at this. I mean, I think these are just amazing. Look at that. I mean, the deep, like invitation into the blue and the calm and the, isn't it amazing? I think these are actually beautiful, meditative things for your altar. Like put it by your desk and stare at it. And again, there's one way to learn, which is through fact and through like, tick, 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 tick. This is what I know about Gemini. Blah, blah, blah. And then there's another way to learn through like entering. What I loved about this chart, and Wyow said that it was just completely not a mistake, but just like a delicious happening, is that look at this entry point, and this entry point comes into the 8th house. It's like this house, it's like this invitation into the mystery. So I think that something happens when Wyow creates these that are it's a very intuitive process where she doesn't even really know sometimes, why the color but the chart itself takes over and something comes through that is beyond fact. Yeah. So when I walked in, there were a whole bunch of them done, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. So, good. All right. So today, I want to remind you, by the way, just on a concrete thing, is that we will not meet again until January 8th. It's gonna go 3 weeks because January 1st is actually our next technical meeting, but we'll meet January 8th. Okay. So just to lay that in. So here's what we're going to do today. Oh my goodness. I'm kind of excited about it. And I've been threatening to do it for some time. We're going to look at, in more detail, the correlations of the signs with the body. And I drew heavily on a beautiful chart, which I'm going to have Karen Wyow, Karen Wyow, Wyow Karen. I'm going to have her put up on the site or on Patreon and on Facebook. Join Facebook if you haven't. I'm going to have her put it up, and it's a morphology of the signs and rays. And this is a compilation that my dad created years ago, but it's really good. And we're going to cover a little bit of that territory. So I've drawn heavily on that, but I've also drawn heavily on the astrologer Leonie Hodgson, who is a brilliant astrologer who wrote Om Union Astrology. And she also just wrote a book that I've talked with you about the medical connection, the connection of astrology and diseases and the whole medical component of astrology. But she has actually a beautiful chart that takes the whole body and kind of shows the different signs and planets and rays connected. That is excellent. So I have worked with both of those, and of course my own knowledge, to create a kind of larger offering to you around this. So I invite you, as I start to give you some of the areas that the signs rule, I invite you to think, obviously, particularly of your sun, moon, and rising sign, because the moon often reflects health issues. It can reflect where we have vulnerabilities or weaknesses. So too, the sun sign and opposite the sun are entry points for some difficulty sometimes around health or health journeys. And then, of course, any planets that you have in the 6th house, whatever sign they're in, you can also look at that for areas that health issues show up. But beyond that, we're also talking about how you can sometimes look like your chart. I recently was with this group, and I've been working with this woman for 10 years, and I said to myself, she is not Gemini rising. She doesn't look Gemini rising. She's got to be Cancer rising. And it had a lot to do with her own morphology, her physiognomy, what she looks like, versus, and it had a lot to do with her actions and her work in the world as well. But I finally just said, you don't look like your chart. We've got to reassess this. So it also has to do with, well, how do we see the signs in the face, or in the body? So let's just dive right in. But I'm going to invite you to do one more thing. I'm like, dive in, and then I'm going to say something else. I'm going to invite you to think of this. Wherever your rising sign is, think of the sun and moon body parts as support to the rising sign body part. Okay, and I'll say more about this, and for some of you it'll make more sense, and some of you will be like, "That I love that. That makes a ton of sense." Some of you it'll be more metaphorical. Some of you might not make sense at all, but let's just see if it works. Like, for example, in my case, Leo rules the heart, right? So I have Leo rising. Leo rules the heart. So everything, my Aries and my Capricorn, have to be in service to my heart. So my head, my overly active, sometimes crashing forward head full of ideas, has to actually be in service to the radiance of the heart. And my Capricorn knees and skeleton, but I would say specifically knees, have to be filled with humility and flexibility to support the heart. So, this is something we got to play with, and something I sort of made up, but I'm just curious if you'll find any resonances around it. All right. So Aries, let's start with Aries. Aries rules the head. And in fact, even as I say these things to you, just like really go, okay, this whole domain is Aries, and it rules the cranium. It rules the cerebrum, that's the front part of the brain, right? It rules the eyes. It rules the whole face. Like, think about it. I come forth. That's Aries. I come forth. I come forth with my face. So it rules the face. It even rules the hair to some extent. The jaw. So for me, I chomp. Like the tension in the jaw comes through my own Aries. It rules the nose. It sort of rules everything on your face. It rules sight itself, the idea of seeing something. It rules sight. It rules your skull. It rules the pineal gland, which I don't know enough about, but those of you that do, let's find the connections, and it also rules, and again, some of these things I'm not as, I don't know that I can draw the connections yet, but it rules melatonin and serotonin. So these would be good research projects. Well, why would it rule melatonin, which has something to do with the skin, right? And so we'd have to go down these roads, but start to notice if any of these areas, if you have strong Aries, if you've bashed your head, if you have migraines, if you have issues with your eyes. I mean, I have been nearsighted since I was 13 years old, right? If you're something with your jaw, all of these things. And in terms of how it shows up, you know, like Aries have tall foreheads, Aries have big heads, both of, you know, this kind of, they're not like little delicate features, they're big features. So this is how you can start to sort of see the energy in a person. Okay, let's go on. Taurus rules the neck. So Aries the head, Taurus the neck. It also rules the adenoids. It rules the jugular vein. It rules the larynx. So we're looking at everything in the neck, right? It rules the larynx. It's even connected, interestingly enough, it's more connected to the mouth than Aries is, because the sound that comes up and out, because Taurus is the throat and the neck. It rules the esophagus, the palate, the throat. It rules the tongue. It rules the thyroid. It rules the tonsils. So everything that helps to create sound, that helps to give voice to, that, you know, it's like, this is the center of, this is the throat center, it's the center of creativity. And when we create a word, that is the ultimate, like, giving form to the invisible. So there's something about, and often Taurus have very big, thick necks, and it's pronounced. Taurus, you can also sometimes see Taurus in the eye placement, how sometimes the eyes are further apart with Taurus, interestingly. So, you know, you can start to notice some patterns that repeat themselves. So, you know, it's also fun to think about, okay, well, the neck, the head sits on the neck. So there's something about the stability of Taurus and the necessary landing place for the Aries ideas. It's almost like you have to have this stability to be able to come forth with the Aries ideas. Okay, Gemini. So you can feel, we're going to go down. Gemini actually rules the hands. It rules the fingers. So it rules the arms. And then what you want to do is you want to follow the hands and the fingers and the arms all the way to the lungs, because that's a big thing about Gemini. In fact, the biggest thing about Gemini is the breathing system. Breathing and speech is connected to Gemini too. So you can also see how the lungs fuel the sound as well, right? You need the breath to create the sound. So they're connected. But you have this breathing and speech, all the airways are ruled by Gemini. The nervous system is ruled by Gemini. That's why we have a lot of sometimes over agitation with Gemini, or even air signs in general. Aquarius and Gemini both have a lot of nervous energy. So the whole nervous system is ruled by Gemini. The brain stem, again, I don't know enough about the brain stem, but it's ruled by Gemini. And the ears. So pay attention when there's asthma or breathing issues or ear infections. Could be connected to strong Gemini, or at least difficult relationships with that Gemini energy. So head, neck, breathing, and speech, Aries, Taurus, Gemini. And then let's move to Cancer. Now, Cancer is huge in terms of what it rules. It's kind of like all things soft, you know, in the whole front surface of the body. It rules digestion primarily, like when I'm also talking about body systems, you know, so it rules digestion. And Virgo is also connected to digestion, but Cancer rules digestion. It rules the gallbladder. It rules the liver. It rules the pancreas. It rules the stomach. Okay. It also rules everything connected to female reproduction. So everything, it rules babies, birth, breasts, cervix, motherhood, fertility, menstruation, ovaries, pregnancy, womb, all of the things that are connected to giving birth. So even though Scorpio is the sign that is you know, really connected to sexuality, Cancer has a very strong connection as well because it rules all the feminine processes, all right? And it also rules the lymphatic system and the tissues and the fluids, right? So it's a water sign, so a lot about fluids. But when we think about Cancer, I mean, I see this again and again and again. Anybody with strong Cancer, stomach aches, stress in the stomach, you know, emotional causes and physical causes. It's often like, what am I digesting? Am I digesting what I'm going through, or am I not digesting what I'm going through? You know, so it's a physical issue with digestion, but it's also like an emotional issue with digestion. You know, and also, by the way, you know, it does rule the breasts, and that is a big component of Cancer. You often see, you know, women with strong Cancer often have large breasts. I mean, you're the mama. It's the big mama energy, and often have breast issues as well. But of course, every time I say something like that, you could have a planet that softens that prevents that, you know, if you had strong Saturn next to your moon, it might not be the case, you know? So you can look at, you have to look at all the factors, of course. Okay, Leo. I mean, Cancer is one of the biggest ones in terms of what it rules. So we just covered probably the biggest one. Leo is the heart, right? So it rules the whole cardiovascular system. And again, the number of people that I know that have strong Leo that actually feel things in their heart, you know, that have like, you know, sometimes pain or their heart palpitations, or, you know, the stress shows up in the heart. I just see it again and again. So heart, arteries, blood, capillaries. Interestingly enough, Leo rules the spine. And I think that, you know, you can feel the heart center, like at the center of the spine. And it almost, to me, it feels like the spine to me feels like it's carrying the heart up. You know, like there's some connection between the heart and the spine, but Leo is definitely connected to the spine. It's also definitely connected to the spleen, which is a very powerful energy center. And that's a great mystery, because a lot of times people, oh, you can take the spleen out, no problem, it doesn't have any purpose anymore or whatever. But in fact, it's a site of great pranic replenishment. Okay, and Leo also rules veins, and it rules vitality. And it rules the immune system. And this is another one where I'm like, okay, the immune system, let's, you know, there's something about, you know, building strength and courage and vitality that is Leo. And sort of when the immune system's down, everything is depleted. So there's something about that Leo energy that needs to roar through the system to build the immune system. Virgo is again connected to digestion. It does rule the intestines. It rules specifically intestinal digestion. And it rules the abdomen. It rules the appendix. And it rules the small and large bowels. So I've said this before, but, you know, with Virgo, it's all about like, what are you putting into your body and what should you not be putting into your body, and what can you use and what can you not use? And that's why so many Virgos are so concerned about, you know, what can I eat that serves me best, and what can I absolutely not eat, and what can I process and what can I not process. And that's what all those systems do, you know, the intestines, the small and large bowels. So it's a extracting what is of use and getting rid of what is not. That's what Virgo does through their whole life with everything, not just with food. What is of use, what is not, what is practical, what is not needed. Yeah. Good. Okay, Libra. Libra's very, you know, it has just a few main rulerships. It, you know, in general, in the body, it rules the torso, the whole torso. And often when you see a Libra, they're somehow very well proportioned. You know, it's like you see the balance in the body. It's almost like that, you know, the Leonardo da Vinci 5-pointed star of the man. That's very Libran. And, but Libra rules the urinary system, it rules kidneys, and it rules bladder. So you do see a lot of urinary tract infections, that kind of thing with Libra, and also the kidneys, this whole balancing of the yin and yang, and where we push too hard. It's connected even to the adrenals in some ways, though Scorpio is as well. But Libra is always seeking, the kidneys. It's almost like the kidneys are this deeply feminine. I remember my teacher, Sophia, would always talk about how they're these little plump pink, kidney beans. And it's so important that they're pink and fluffy and feminine, and they're the most yin. They carry all this yin energy. And so isn't it interesting that Mars rules Aries, bashing through, whereas Libra rules the kidneys, which is like, let's bring balance. Let's make sure we remember the feminine energy. Let's not burn ourselves out with 10 cups of coffee a day. Note to self. Okay. I never drink 10 cups of coffee a day. I just have a latte. But it is this Aries Libra thing in my life, definitely, where I can burn out, and the Libra says, you're not bringing balance in. You're not paying attention to your pink, fluffy yin kidneys. Scorpio rules the adrenals, the adrenal glands. It's like this kind of fight or flight energy. It also rules all the lovely things. It rules excretion. It rules the anus. It rules the bowel. It rules the rectum. It rules like the elimination. It rules the end of the line. It rules like how we get rid of things, which is incredibly important. And Scorpio's willing to get into the, this crap of it. And I mean, it's like, if you have Scorpio rising, you're like, oh, well, great. So I'm here for my rectum. But the truth is, like, you're good at, bringing finality, ending the process, getting rid of what doesn't serve you. Scorpio's amazing at that. So, and it also rules the whole act of reproduction. It rules sex, and it would rule all the reproductive system. Yeah. And so oftentimes you do see people with like Moon in Scorpio or strong Scorpio, they do have issues like prostate cancer, or they do have, issues with ovarian cysts, or you see that there can be issues in that area. It's good to pay attention to. It's good to know where our points are that could be a little bit more fragile. Okay, Sagittarius is the legs, the hips, and the thighs, right? Where it's like a horse. The horse has those gorgeous legs, hips, thighs. They run. That's Sagittarius. Thus, it also rules the sciatic nerve, that gigantic nerve that just covers like a big chunk of our body. And sometimes it's interesting. You can see Sagittarius issues are often come in the form of like movement disorders. So like things where you can't quite control the body, the body is like doing its own thing. It can be ruled by Sagittarius. But for sure, it's the whole leg, hip, thigh area. And, you could like hip replacement, or you could have, that sciatic nerve thing. You could have the pain or issues there. Capricorn is really like the structure, right? It's the body main frame. It's the joints. It's the skeleton. It's the spinal column. Both Leo and Capricorn connected to the spine. Sometimes there's overlaps. It's the knees. It's the nails. It's the teeth. So all these, like, it's almost like what remains, like after all the skin and everything else falls away. It's like there's Capricorn. And Capricorn lasts, and Capricorns themselves often live a long time. So joints, ligaments, skeleton, skin. Skin is interesting too, because the skin is the boundary. It keeps everything in. That's what Capricorn does. It keeps in all the tender bits. The skin keeps in all the tender bits. So that's why the skin is related to Capricorn, because it's like it's our structure. You can feel that, like, our body teaches us about the sign. So you can feel the like clarity and precision of your body, and then how it, the strength, the rigidity, the structure of Capricorn. Okay, Aquarius rules the calves, the ankles, So it's all about that flexibility. You know, ankles are everything. Like if you have ankles, everything on top of it depends on your ankles. Can you, you know, you standing upright depends on your ankles. So there's a lot of movement in the ankles. It also rules, and this is really key, it rules blood circulation. So if there are diseases of the blood, Aquarius can be connected. And like I said, it has its own connection to the nervous system, but the circulation of blood is big with Aquarius, because remember that whole thing, water of life am I, poured forth for thirsty men. Well, it's also the waters moving through the body in some ways as well. And then this is interesting. Aquarius, we can say, rules the etheric body. So it rules the energy body that is just, you know, extending beyond the physical body. So it rules the subtle body. So it rules this whole thing when people have like a limb cut off, you know, an amputation, and they still feel the limb, that phantom limb. That's the etheric body. And that is, Aquarius rules that whole domain. It also rules genetics. It rules the DNA. And then finally, Pisces. Pisces rules the feet. I kind of love the simplicity of it. I mean, it also rules, it has its own rulership over the bloodstream, again, the waters, and any water system, any lymphatic system in the body. It's like how things flow, but it's really like the feet. And this whole idea about how the whole body, all the signs rest on the feet for us to be upright. And so Pisces has to synthesize all the systems and stand on the ground. And that's not always easy. And to walk with awareness of the whole body and being, the whole system. Yeah. So I'm you know, I'm hoping you heard in there like, aha, oh my God, when I was 5, I mean, I just heard a story of a little girl who, a friend's child who's just 12, and, you know, she's got tons of Capricorn, and what's going on? She's having to have knee surgeries already, you know? So maybe you're already feeling some resonances with some things that you've gone through. I do find when people specifically have strong Virgo in their chart, that often they do have at least once or twice in their life a very significant health journey, do you know? And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a scary thing, but they do have a very significant like healing crisis that they need to go through. And maybe you can feel where one of those body parts is pronounced, or whether you feel a certain connection to it. Are there, you know what I might do before I continue is just ask if there are any specific questions that came up, Wyo, about those body parts, or?
We just have one question so far about, would we also look at Chiron for health concerns?
Would we also look at Chiron for health concerns? Yes. Yeah, I would say yes. Because Chiron is the wounded healer, and so where are we wounded? It might be that we're wounded physically. Yeah, it might be that there's an issue physically that needs to be addressed. I mean, it's always manifesting at all levels, you know? The physical is one indication, but then what's the emotional level? What's the mental level? I was just watching this amazing little film. I found out recently that a dear teacher and friend of mine from years ago in Boulder, Melissa Michaels, who is, she's a 5 Rhythms dance teacher. And she studied directly with Gabriel Roth. She was one of her main students, and she's just a powerhouse of a woman. And she has very, very strong Scorpio in her chart. And I'd lost touch with her, but then I just got this little film that she made, and it's like 11 minutes long, and you could probably find it by Googling it. But she found out a year and a half ago that she had ovarian cancer. I want to say ovarian or uterine, but she had, and it was advanced, and it was not good. And she immediately had surgery. And this whole film is her dancing and telling the story of this. It's very powerful. And again, of course, we have the Scorpio reproductive organs issue. But the reason why I'm telling you the story is that at one point she was getting chemotherapy, and she said, and by the way, getting chemotherapy for cancer of, you know, around the reproductive system, what's the sign opposite it? Taurus. What did she do every time she finished getting chemotherapy? She went and she laid her body on the earth and put her body directly on the grass and the earth for like hours. And there's a picture of her just laid on the earth. And that's what she did after every session. So the Taurus as a healing to the Scorpio. But she was feeling, she went in to get chemo. They wouldn't let her have it because her platelets were too low. So she was like, I can change this. I mean, I can make a difference here. And she went home and she said she drew pictures of platelets. She looked up platelets. She looked up what they looked like. She drew pictures of what she said were happy platelets. And then she said, and then I danced happy platelets. And for those of you that don't know the 5 rhythms, look into it. It's a beautiful movement system. And it sort of includes the 5 rhythms of of flowing, staccato, chaos, lyrical, and stillness. And so you dance your way through each of these chapters. So she danced happy platelets, and she went in, I think she said 24 hours later, and they had risen significantly and enough for her to get another round of chemo. So I'm just saying this because, of course, we know this, but always these layers of energy follows thought. And when we process something emotionally, it changes physically. I just found out that for the first time, I went into the doctor yesterday to have my blood drawn, and I've been wrestling forever and ever with low iron and low ferritin. And I just got, for the first time, the notice that I'm not anemic. I'm 0.1 above not being anemic, right? But I would say to you, have I changed much physically about what I'm doing? A bit. But have I been working emotionally, and have I been working, like, feeling true to how I use my energy along the line of my purpose and feeling like stronger because of it? Yes, you know, so you can enter these health crises and places of vulnerability from all different perspectives and can heal from all different places. So let me just, let me tell you a few more things. I'm going to just say a few things from this beautiful compilation, just because it's kind of fun, because it covers lots of different signs for each area of the body. So, for example, you know, what I was saying earlier, when we look at, if you're looking for the signs in the body, what do you see? So Aries, you often do see an enlarged prominence of the forehead. You see strong forehead. Whereas with Taurus, you'll see it's often smaller, it's often shorter, it's often, you know, and Scorpio, Taurus and Scorpio, you see a much shorter forehead, right? Also, I will say that also Gemini and Sagittarius, you can see larger foreheads because with Sagittarius of the Jupiter fullness of that. I was saying this earlier, but you can see, you know, look for whenever you see Aries, look for large head. Whenever you see Taurus, it's much smaller. Libra often has a very oval shape of the head. And this is going to sound strange, and some of these sound really stark, but sometimes with Capricorn, you can almost really feel and see the skull, like it's somehow the skull is more prominent, you know, and of course with shaved, you can, you know, shaved head, you can see that more, but you can actually see more of the skeletal system in a Capricorn. We don't go through every sign here. We only go through some of the most prominent indications in what we see, right? So we could also say that around the head, the hair, yes, of course, the Leo mane, but sometimes in Aquarius, you see like the wiry mane, or in Virgo even, sometimes you see a little, like my dad calls it like an electric demonstration around the head. So almost like a wiriness. However, also Jeff Hinshaw mentioned this, which I think is really cool and interesting. He said that he was noticing that he was noticing so many Virgos who braided their hair perfectly. And he started asking people, like, these beautiful braids, almost like this priestess energy. It's like weaving the wild energy of Leo into the Virgo composure and putting it in its place, you know? So even sometimes what people do to their hair, right? Oh, there's so much here. I don't know how deeply to go. We'll say a little bit more about hair. Scorpio, You'll often see with Scorpio with men, like really like that 5 o'clock shadow energy, or dark hair, or the body hair is really pronounced with Scorpio. You can see like that intensity coming through even the hair, which is interesting. Also with the hair, with Scorpio and Virgo, you often see a widow's peak, you know, that kind of little, almost like a V kind of thing. You often see that with Scorpio and Virgo. Fire signs, you often see kind of balding with men, particularly Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. You see it a lot. Hair also, you might see like thinner hair with Capricorn. Aquarius is more the unruly hair. Gemini is often thinner or lighter. One of the things that is again intriguing is that sometimes with Aquarius, you see early graying. When you have strong Aquarius, like you might suddenly, like I remember my friend in high school, by the time she got to college, she had this shock of gray hair, just one streak of gray hair, and she had strong Aquarius. And you'll see it where it's sudden. It can happen suddenly. Let's look a little bit at, let's think a little bit about eyes, okay? I mentioned the Taurus, eyes apart, further apart. Aries sometimes has, because it rules sight, it has that kind of intensity through the eyes, like strong. Taurus also has sometimes slow blinking, right? And like it's almost like it's the bull, right? It's the cow. So, you know, that kind of, they sometimes have the slow blinking. Whereas Gemini is like this, oh my God, let me tell you all about it. And the eyes are going and blinking, blinking, blinking. You can start to see these things. It's amazing. Scorpios often have very deep set eyes. You could say Capricorn's eyes are often closer together. And sometimes they have like almost a remove to them a little bit. It's not like, oh, the ocean of sensitivity I see in your eyes. There's almost like a detachment in them sometimes. Whereas Pisces, you can see they're almost like two pools of water. They're almost like the beautiful, they're, you know, you can sometimes even see like fish eyes, not always, and don't take it personally, but sometimes you can see like, you know, that kind of wide open water. Good. Let's look a little bit. I'm going to send you all of this, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. Let's look at lips a little bit. Aries definitely has full lips. Cancer definitely usually has a large lower lip. And in my case, like I'm an Aries, plus I have Jupiter in Cancer, so I have both, right? Taurus also will often have thick lips. The thin-lipped people are often Gemini, Virgo, you really see it with Virgo, and Capricorn, because there's a certain degree of control, particularly with Capricorn and even Virgo. So you can see it sometimes in the lips. I've said when you smile, Gemini shows the gums. Yeah, that's often something. The lips can be kind of bowed when there's Libra present. Interesting. Or pursed more. Sometimes when you see a more pursed mouth, there's often an indication of Virgo. And you know, it's not only your sun sign, right? If you have a stellium in a certain sign, you can see it just as much. Sometimes also, I mean, we haven't even really gotten into this, but sometimes what we really can sometimes see is your ruling planet. So for example, and I would say particularly your personality ruling planet. So sometimes with Aries, what we can really see is a Martian, like fighting disposition, and it might be a ruddiness, or it might be, you know, you can see the Mars in the body. You can see the vitality in the body, right? With Taurus, you can see more of the Venus, which is more the beauty, the magnetism. I mean, so I'm not going to go through all the signs with that, but we have to also think about the ruling planets as revealing as well. I'm going to just give you a couple more just for fun. And they're so interesting, right? Like, for example, sometimes when you have even the voice, Aries is often strong and projecting, Scorpio is often really deep, Taurus has a kind of like really full sound, Gemini is much generally higher, Sagittarius gets ahead of itself in its speech, it can even trip up, it can even stutter because it gets so ahead of itself, right? Gemini, many words. Libra is kind of often you hear like a melodious laughter, right? So you're getting the idea. Even hands, you know, what is it? I feel like, oh, there's something interesting even with the hands that my dad is always checking out, which is so interesting. It's like the heart line to the lifeline. If there's a gap there, there's often strong Leo in the chart. So there's a whole nother thing with just the hands and the deep resonance between the hands and astrology. And actually, two of the women that I've had on the podcast, Meredith Hunt and Erin Schleybaugh, and Lynn Jordan, although Erin studied as well, but Meredith Hunt and Lynn Jordan both are hand analysts, and the overlaps with even the fingers are amazing. Like this is the Mercury finger, this is the Sun finger, this is the Saturn finger, this is the Jupiter finger, right? Like it's crazy. I think we'll leave it at that. I'm going to put this up for you so you can study it. And so you can ask yourself, are these true? Am I seeing this? Is this accurate? So are there questions? Okay, what's the question?
Any signs more strongly linked to mental health issues than others?
Mental health issues. That's a good question. Like I have not done a statistic, analysis around that, but I would say that there's a lot of anxiety with Virgo. A lot of there's a tremendous, can be a worry with Virgo. With Pisces, there can be Pisces and Scorpio, a tendency towards depression, and like falling into the dark a bit. Aquarius can also get a little, wired in a way that doesn't serve the mental health well. I mean, frankly, every sign we could talk about in terms of like how it can trip itself up. But I do notice in terms of particularly the kind of like digging in, like the loops of anxiety or fear, Virgo, Scorpio, Pisces. Yeah, those are the ones that I would highlight. Does anybody else have thoughts about that? I'm going to take this off now because I have a little heater here. Does anybody else have any other questions? So what I would say is, just for fun, let's just see what happens if I pull up a chart and we look at it in terms of, and this could work, it could not work. I mean, like, we're going to just see. I'm going to pull up. Oh boy, hang on. There we go. Okay. So, just for fun, like here's Kathy. And I'm just going to riff about trying to weave in the body a little bit here. So immediately I see that she has a Cancer moon in the Cancer house. So whenever I see strong Cancer, I also feel like immediately there's layers of sensitivity that are going to affect the body. They're going to affect the stomach, that are going to affect the depth of feeling is going to be felt like very physically, because the stomach is just one of those areas, like the stomach and the head, Cancer and Aries, it just shows up. If Aries is pushing too much, it gets its migraines and its headaches. And if Cancer is feeling too much and absorbing too much, it's just all in the stomach. And so we could say though that so there's tremendous sensitivity here. And then the Virgo energy is this in the intestines, and the digestion and the discernment. And we can say there could be interesting things about health and well-being here, because she's a Virgo sun in the Virgo house on a Virgo journey, right? So that could very much have to do with some kind of health and healing, or of her own, or helping others. But to speak of my little formula, we could say that the stomach and the breasts, the sensitivity, the vulnerability, and her discerning ability of Virgo, the discrimination of this belongs, this does not, are all in service to her Aries head, to her bold idea, to what needs to come forth. So she feels it all and she discerns, and she could hang out here and be like, oh my God, I'm feeling a tremendous amount, and it's hard to come out of my shell. And she could be like, oh, it's, I have to wait. I have to be very selective here, and I have to make sure not to move forward until everything's perfect. And yet what's calling is every part of her head that wants to come forth and share. So these guys have to be in service to the Aries. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's metaphorical, sometimes it's actually quite literal, but there's something very Martian that's being called in when these two energies are much more feminine and much more receptive and much more careful. Yeah. Whenever you see Cancer and Virgo together in the two primary areas of the sun and the moon, or in the sun, moon, or rising, I mean, these are the deep feminine, divine feminine energies. These are the mother energies. And, when you think about mother, what do you think about? You think of the child nestled into the whole front surface of the body. You think of the breasts, you think of nourishment, you think of tenderness. And yet, isn't it interesting that Kathy's here calling in this feisty Aries? She's calling in the much more of the masculine energy. But it kind of always gets, it always gets interesting, because what rules Aries at the personality level? Mars. Where is Mars? Back in Cancer. So what must she come forward with? Well, there's a tremendous energy here around family and feeling and sensitivity and home. So part of what she must come forward with is this vulnerability and sensitivity and tenderness. Yeah? Make sense? Any questions about that? I mean, we're just going to try to let it blend a little bit and weave together a little bit, and see what comes up when we look at a chart. And as I've said to you, I always want you to, when I bring up a chart, I want you to start going like, what do I notice? What do I notice? What's the first thing I notice? What's the first thing I would say if somebody said, tell me a little bit about my chart, right? So I will just say to you, like, I'm just for fun, I'm just going to say to you, the first thing that I'm hit with when I see Moon in Taurus, Pisces Sun, Libra rising is peace. Peace. Because Libra is the sign of peace. Taurus is the energy of slow, stable manifesting of beauty. And Pisces is unconditional love. And it's also another sign of the peacemaker. So, but let's think about that, in terms of the body. So there's something here about the creativity of the throat center that she just comes in with, of the whole realm of making the sound. There's something about the voice that could be, her voice could be very soothing to those in stress, to those who are going through 8th house issues, right? She could be soothing to herself going through 8th house issues. How could she be soothing to herself? Oh my gosh, there's a gigantic blimp up above me right now. I'm looking out the window and it's like the most gigantic blue and yellow blimp. I wish I could show it to you. But the Moon in Taurus in the 8th house, there's this beautiful natural, these rhythms for her. I was going to say, she could soothe herself through her own creativity, through her own voice, through her own throat center, right? So then we have Pisces. Whenever I think of Pisces and the feet, I can't help but think of the pilgrim. I can't help but think of the one who will walk in peace. And What is it in harmony with? Look at this. It's in harmony with her Neptune, the god of love, the god of unconditional love. So this idea of, you know, the artist, fifth house sun, walking in peace, her feet leaving a blessing in their wake. Yeah. And then what is she here for? Ultimately, this Libra energy, which seeks balance and right relationship. And so in the body, I go to the kidneys, and I go to the factor like, is there a healthy balance of the masculine and the feminine? Is there, also, the kidneys help process so much like of what the body doesn't need. Like they're great, they're the great filters. And so like Libra filters out what is not needed and leaves a body in balance and in peace. So in a way, even the two-ness of the kidneys, like think about that. Gemini rules hands, two-ness. Libra rules kidneys, two-ness, and those are the signs of relationship. So even the two-ness says, let's, you know, how can these energies work? How can the masculine and the feminine work the best in my body? And there's a lot of feminine energy between Taurus and Pisces, but Libra says, yeah, but we want the balance too. And that's why Libra is also a very initiating cardinal sign. It does have some masculine drive to it. But I guess in the simplest way, you could say her throat and her feet are in service to the balancing kidneys in the body, you know, to the balancing agents in the body. Her walk and her voice serve to stand for balance in the body. I mean, it's worth playing with. It's worth feeling. I mean, I would almost draw it, do you know? I would almost want to draw it, just, you know, to draw something in the body that feels like, okay, these areas of my life are what are highlighted. I don't think I have. Let's see. Okay. And please, if you have questions, just as I'm doing this, Waya will let me know. Okay, here's Judith. Remember, what does Sagittarius rule? It rules the hips, the legs, the thighs. It rules movement. What does Scorpio rule? It rules the whole reproductive system. It also rules the whole eliminative system. So in a way, like getting rid of what does not serve in the body and moving forward, Sagittarius, vigorously and with momentum and speed towards Virgo, which I would say, you know, Virgo is discernment. Virgo is the finding the most perfect devoted service. So again, this is just play, right? Like, so Sagittarius moves us with vigor, and it's curious, and it wants to study the big things, and it wants to know the big things, and it moves towards it. And Scorpio says, this doesn't work, and this doesn't work, and this doesn't work. You know, I'm getting rid of this, and I'm transforming. And it's all in the name of Virgo purification. It's all in the name of healing. It's all in the name of honing in to your exact priestess service. Now, again, when we're looking at these other charts, we looked at one with the moon in Taurus. Could there be, could there be tonsil issues? Could there be, I lose my voice issues? Yes, there could be, because the moon is there. Moon in Scorpio, could there be issues with the eliminative system? Yes. Could there be issues with the reproductive system? Yes. Also, sometimes Scorpio and Cancer produce illnesses that have to do with emotional repression, like tucking things away. And so we always want to keep processing all that we feel so it doesn't get stagnant or stuck. Yeah. It's kind of beautiful. I can't help but noticing that right now, where is Jupiter in the heavens, everyone? We should know this. Jupiter moved into Sagittarius November 8th. It's right around 7 or 8 degrees right now. So it's right on Judith's sun. So this is a once in 12 year time of growth for her, and of painting the biggest picture for herself, and then going after it with a lot of care and a meticulous attention to the journey, which is Virgo. It's like her inspired priestess is at work. Okay, we're going to do one more, unless there's any questions or thoughts. Or did anybody have?
I imagine Virgo might have more disorder.
Oh my gosh, I'm glad you said that. It said, I imagine that Virgo might have eating disorders. Yes, I do see this. Virgo, Cancer, issues of eating disorders, where we can't really see ourselves clearly, because of that Virgo perfectionism comes in. It would be fascinating to study, anorexia, bulimia, these things, because I am certain that there would be either strong Virgo, strong Cancer, or strong Saturn, which is that kind of disciplining factor in connection to those signs. And when you have Virgo or Cancer in the 6th house, the house of health, or the 4th house, like those are Virgo and Cancer houses, that can also be highlighted. That's excellent for noting that. Thank you for noting that. Yeah, that's a very powerful thing that you can absolutely see. I'm going to do one more, and then we'll read a poem. And then I'll send you on your beautiful way. Okay, here's Lynette. Again, isn't that interesting that we called up another person with Jupiter right on her ascendant right now? So I would love you to just play with this idea. Okay, so she's calling in Sagittarius rising. So immediately, I'd love you to have the image in the body, right? I'd love you to have the image of her running, of her leaping, of her jumping, of her riding a horse, of her skiing. I mean, I'd love for you to feel the power and strength of the legs and what that means. And somebody once said to me, Sagittarius is either the athlete who's moving forward with great speed and agility, or it's the one that understands or stands under. So it's the philosopher. So it holds the weight of the big questions of the world underneath it. So it's like it stands under and takes the big ideas and turns them inward. So it's not always that you're like the most vital outwardly, but you could have this whole big world within, expansion within. But I would love you to think of the legs and the hips and the thighs and that movement. And isn't that great for somebody who has the moon in Capricorn? Because the moon in Capricorn, it can get too frozen, can get too held, can get too I'm just, I'm contained. This is my skeleton. I'm contained. Whereas Sagittarius wants to move that skeleton through space and wants it to have fun and wants to have joy in it, right? And because Lynette also has that sun in the 10th house of Capricorn, there is that energy that's a double whammy of Capricorn. So in a way, let's say this, her Libra, again, the energy that wants to balance, the energy that kidney energy, her Libra wants to bring balance between the vitality of Sagittarius and the structure of Capricorn, the movement of Sagittarius and the quiet of Capricorn. And, she's in an interesting place because, again, we all should know where Saturn is, and Saturn's in Capricorn, and it's approaching her moon. So that's another body thing. When Saturn hits the moon, which that's about to happen for me as well, you have to be really attentive to your body because it's a test around the body. You have to make sure you're getting enough sleep, and you have to take care of yourself, and you have to tend to the parts that want to just push through. Okay. So I would love for your homework on Facebook or Patreon. Let's transfer to Facebook just to keep building that group. But I'd love you to point out some discovery that you've made about the body, you know, and about your sun, moon, or rising, and any connection that you've made as a result of knowing more of these body parts. Simple as that. Okay, so I want to read you a poem. And, you know, I always have these flashes on the way over. I'm like, did I read that poem before? But I'm going to read it to you again if I've read it to you before, because it's a celebration of this group. And it's a celebration of the way that we gather. And it's a celebration of the work that can only be done in group formation. And this is called This Grace That Scorches Us. And it's by Jan Richardson again. So with me now, just take a breath. And bring the stillness back from the beginning. And let's not race ahead yet. Here's one thing you must understand about this blessing. It is not for you alone. It is stubborn about this. Do not even try to lay hold of it if you are by yourself, thinking you can carry it on your own. To bear this blessing, you must first take yourself to a place where everyone does not look like you or think like you, a place where they do not believe precisely as you believe, where their thoughts and ideas and gestures are not exact echoes of your own. Bring your sorrow, bring your grief, bring your fear, bring your weariness, your pain, your disgust at how broken the world is, how fractured, how fragmented by its fighting, its wars, its hungers, its penchant for power, its ceaseless repetition of the history it refuses to rise above. I will not tell you this blessing will fix all that. But in the place where you have gathered, wait, watch, listen. Lay aside your inability to be surprised, your resistance to what you do not understand. See then whether this blessing turns to flame on your tongue, sets you to speaking what you cannot fathom, or opens your ear to a language beyond your imagining that comes as a knowing in your bones, a clarity in your heart that tells you this is the reason we were made. For the ache that finally opens us. For this struggle, this grace that scorches us toward one another and into the blazing day. I couldn't help but hear all the astrological resonances. I was like, the flame on your tongue, Taurus, to the speaking, Gemini, to the bones, Sagittarius, to your heart, Leo, to the ache, Chiron, right? Start listening for these things. All right, friends, we're over, but love you and big love to each and every one of you, and have a beautiful, beautiful holiday season. And we will see you in the new year on January 8th. All right. Bye, friends.